Welcome to another Erik Wait whiskey study, and I'm currently celebrating Texas Whiskey Month, and this is my third review of a bourbon from Garrison Brothers Distillery. This is the Estacado. This is a Texas straight bourbon whiskey, but finished in a port cask, and this one is my favorite of the three that I have reviewed. I tasted a few others at the distillery as well, and I like those. But I bought this one because this one is my favorite. But before we get into this whiskey, here are my notes. The Garrison Brothers Estacado Texas Port Finish Straight Bourbon Whiskey is the newest of the Garrison Brothers handcrafted experimentals collection. In 2015, Llano Estacado Winery, founded in 1976 and located on the Texas High Plains near Lubbock, contacted Garrison Brothers and suggested that they do a collaboration. Garrison Brothers put 10 15-gallon barrels of 2-year-old straight bourbon into 8 large port wine barrels for finishing for 9 months with a total aging of 3 years. This whiskey is bottled at 53.5% alcohol by volume or 107 proof. It sells for about $70 for a 375 milliliter bottle at the distillery. Alrighty, so as you saw there, this has been finished in a port cask. However, a little clarification on that. Port comes from Portugal. It's a protected GI, geographical indication. Just like champagne is not just sparkling wine, it comes from Champagne. It's a protected geographical indication or designation, or GI for short. You can't export a sparkling wine made in the United States that's called champagne into the EU, into the European Union or the UK. It's not, you just can't do it because it's protected. That name is protected. In the same way, port is also protected. So you can make a fortified wine here in the United States and call it port, but you're not going to export it into the EU or in the UK. So I'm always curious about American-made fortified wines and what goes into them. Some fortified wines are made with, say, 100% Zinfandel. They call it a port wine. Other than the fact that it's fortified, it has nothing to do, there's no relationship to actual port. There are traditional grapes that go into port wines. So I went to the website of the winery, found the port wine, but they didn't give specific notes as to what grapes go into the wine. So I contacted the winery, and within 24 hours, they responded and told me what grapes went into the fortified wine. Now, would it make a much difference as to what grapes go into it? What percentage of the port is influencing the flavor of the bourbon? I'm curious. I just want to know. I like to get into these things. So, they used 51% Tempranillo. Tempranillo is a Spanish grape, but it's also used in Portugal, but it's called Tinto Roriz. So it is a port grape. Tinto Cow is another. It's a lesser grape. The primary grape that typically goes into port would be Trega Nacional, but Tinto Cow is another one. Alicante Boucher, that's not a port grape. That is a wine that was developed to add a lot more color as a blending wine. And Zinfandel, that's an Italian grape in terms of its, and then goes back to Croatia. It's known here in California as Zinfandel, but it's known as Primitivo in Italy. Cabernet Sauvignon, another French grape. So they got 51% Tempranillo or Tinto Roriz, 17% Tinto Cow. Those are the only Portugal or traditional port grapes. So 68% of the wine that went into the cask was traditional grapes. The rest, Alicante Boucher, Zinfandel, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And then it says various topping wine, 5%. What they mean is the wine loses some to evaporation. You don't want it to oxidize, so you have a little bit of extra wine that you use to then top it off. So just to keep it the cask full, they had another 5% of other wines. So it's non-vintage, which is common fortified wines. They tend to blend percentages in order to maintain some consistency. Now you're going, this is a whiskey review, not a wine review. Why are you going so much into the wines? Because I'm curious about these things. I like to know about these things. And it does have a big impact on this particular whiskey. So this is my favorite. It is a distillery only exclusive, and as you saw there, not inexpensive, but I have really been enjoying this. Now I've had maybe a half a dozen or so bourbons that have been either aged or finished, I would say, in port casks. Some of them, you get bourbon up front, and then you get the wine characteristics on the back end. Some integrate a little bit better than others. I like a nice transition with the bourbon characteristics and the wine characteristics to be about in the middle. And on the finish, integrate so that you're not just getting wine on the end, you're still getting a lingering from the bourbon character. So this, let me show it to you, nice and dark. It has a slight red tinge to it, probably from the influence of the wine cask. But it is a dark amber with a slight tinge of red. Classic bourbon notes. Get some corn notes there. Sort of a grilled corn like you do on a barbecue. Vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, toffee. Some nice spice there, some cinnamon. I'm still getting a little bit of this, what I think of as a classic representative of that area, of that region where the distillery is. This sort of a brush, trees. It also comes across as sort of an herbal sage characteristic to it. And I really like it because I think it really reflects a sense of place for the distillery. But then I do get some of that black fruit notes. A little bit of dried plum, maybe dates, a little bit of raisins, chocolate covered raisins, goobers. All right, on the palate. You've had a bourbon with a Kentucky hug. This is a Texas squeeze. It's got a lot of grip on you, a lot of warmth, a little bit of a bite, but it's fairly smooth across the palate. It's got a nice evolution. Comes on fairly strong, very intense. This is a 53.5% alcohol by volume, 107 proof. It has the intensity of a 60 plus ABV whiskey. It is really bold, really intense. There is nothing subtle about this whiskey. I like the evolution, I like the mid palate, and I like the finish. As I'm talking right now, I can still taste it. It does have, I would say, a leaning a little bit more towards a wine flavor finish. So that port characteristic is really lingering in there, and yet it has never lost its identity as being a bourbon. It's really fantastic. I would say it's predominantly dry, but it does have a tinge of sweetness. Some bourbons that have spent some time in port casks lean a little bit more towards the sweeter side. This remains fairly dry with just a touch of sweetness. Now, what am I going to give it as a score? I'm going to go solid 92 points. I think this is absolutely fantastic. If you're at the distillery, this is one you're definitely going to want to taste and probably bring home. I really like this. All right, if you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you haven't yet subscribed, but you like watching my videos, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe. Give it a thumbs up, share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking channels. Until next time, cheers. Hey, if you liked my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.